Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I am so excited about today's show. You know, on the Entrepreneur Spotlight Series, we always talk about business. That's what we talk about. We talk to entrepreneurs about business. And I've been able to book Mr. Mark Dancer. And Mark is the CEO of N4BI, which stands for the Network for Business Innovation. I've come up with this moniker for Mark. I've been trying to get him on the show now for a couple months. I call him the king of B2B. And he has all the insight, all the multiple years of experience. He consults so many high-power companies about what distribution channels look like, how they can engage, how they can improve them, and so many other things under his umbrella. It's absolutely unbelievable. He's a best-selling author. He's very prolific in his writing. I've been waiting to get Mark on the show for a number of months. I have so many questions. I want to get right to it. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, Andy, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
This is super great to have you. It's really an honor, Mark, and thank you so much for being here. Let's do what we always do to start the show. Let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet and let's tell everybody about N4BI, the Network for Business Innovation.
I am a solopreneur. It's me and my network, right? I partner with industry associations and university associations to help advance the cause of B2B innovation. That's distributors, manufacturers, technology companies, anybody in the B2B space.
I love it so much. And one thing that you've been able to do, Mark, so effectively is you really enable the exchange of ideas between leaders throughout the world on business transformation, social impact, technology adoption, and the like. Who are the types of companies and the types of people that reach out to you for your expertise?
So I do a lot of work with distributors, distribution globally, but in the United States, distribution is a $6 trillion industry. There's 250,000 individual businesses. Their heritage is that they are, they're family held, even if they're still publicly traded. That's the culture. And they're under threat. They're under threat from disruption outside the industry, manufacturers disintermediating them, and they need to learn how to innovate. So my work there is about building foresight, their vision of the future, and actually how to innovate their business models to become something that they are not today.
That's so interesting, Mark. Of course, you've got your newest book. It's the Innovate to Dominate, the 12th edition in Facing the Forces of Change series. I love it so much. And when we think about this emerging mindset, there's so many companies and distribution companies out there that are really faced with the threat of disruption. They need to innovate or else they're going to be disrupted in such a major way. Perhaps they're not even going to be around anymore. So what are some of the disruptive forces that you see that have been changing the dynamic of this entire industry?
Well, first and foremost, there's Amazon Business, right? The business side of Amazon, which is, they don't always report their numbers. A lot of analysts kind of project what their sales are, B2B, but their sales are at a level that if it was a standalone business, they would be amongst the 10 largest distributors, right? And they have everybody knows they have a huge investment in scale in warehouses and robotics and automation and artificial intelligence. And they're aggressive, right? They're very entrepreneurial. So they are looking at the B2B market and deciding which part of it they can go after. And they've had impact and they will continue to have impact. Outside of Amazon, there's just a raft of B2B or I would even say disruptors from the kind of consumer world that are looking at B2B as the next great frontier for disruption. That could be, Uber providing freight, somebody providing warehousing like Airbnb has homes and apartments you can rent in. Basically from outside of disruption, they're looking for friction, for inefficiencies, for processes that have not changed in 10, 20, 30 years, and that's distribution. right? So we know the ones that are thinking about it, that are out there trying to make it happen, and there's a whole raft of other things coming.
Very interesting, Mark. We know that traditional businesses must offer an online service. Everybody has to be online. And typically what's happening now is everybody's looking at leveraging artificial intelligence, as you know, and these types of platform players really will be able to sort of take market share in the future. But the thing that I like what I hear from you, Mark, and one of the reasons why you're a leader, throughout the world in your expertise is, you understand that still there's human beings that are really running the show back here, and it's humans to humans that really makes the difference in the world. So maybe you could talk about that. While technology is so important, there's still human beings behind the process and behind actually the technology that are servicing the businesses.
Yeah, it's a really important topic, right? Because so many of us in business and elsewhere, when we think innovation, when we think change, we think technology, right? Because the virtual platforms and artificial intelligence and automation create exponential gains, right? But what distributors are realizing is that they have a superpower, and it's a superpower they've always had that they've kind of forgotten about, which is that distributors' people live and work where their customers live and work. And ultimately, the goal of every business, and every business is an actual or a potential customer of a distributor, right? But every goal of every business is to achieve human benefits, right? They want to grow so the people in their organization can benefit from that growth. They want to work as teams. They want to deliver solutions to their customers where they live and work. And so what distributors are realizing is that while they have to be experts, they have to master selling online and competing in the virtual space, the way that they're going to stand up to disruption and to some extent defeat disruption, to carve out their space, is by looking at their customers and talking to their customers and saying, how can we make you successful as humans? What are you trying to achieve with your business? What are you trying to achieve in your personal life? And how can we enable that? Not just through the products that we sell, because traditionally, in the long view looking back, distributors were a warehouse that stocked product and took orders. Today, distributors, the ones that are really moving forward, they're winning on the front end of their business. They're winning because, yes, they've got products that you can have from me, but I have services, I have knowledge, I have commitment to the community. Let me jump in, lean in, and help you. They're almost integrators. They're almost VARs in a sense of assembling solutions for customers. And that's on a very human level.
Mark, that's very interesting. And when I was doing some reading on you, you reminded me of something that Tim Cook once said, and he said it at the 2017 MIT commencement address. And he said, technology is capable of doing great things, but it doesn't want to do great things. It doesn't want anything. That part takes all of us. And I think that's what you're talking about right now, Mark. It's very, very interesting. When you look at the clients that you work with, Mark, do you see them so ingrained in their technology and so ingrained in their artificial intelligence and so ingrained in their platform that sometimes they forget that the most important thing is their customer? Or do you still see these companies that you work with focusing on the customer and everything they're doing is to make the customer journey better?
B2B is business to business, right? So it's in their genes to serve their customers, right? But what's happened with technology is that for distributors, and out of the whole B2B ecosystem, I'm mostly talking distributors right now, right? They've been so threatened by disruption that for the last few years, and this is changing, but for the last few years, I think they've been focused on how can I use technology to defend my business, to protect my margins, to lock up my customers so nobody else can get at them. But something really interesting happened in the pandemic, right? Distributors, they figured out first how to shore up their own cash flow and how to make sure that they could get the products they need to resell. And then they trained their eyes on their customers and they leaned in. And what technology and digital things and data, the capabilities that they that they've created have created confidence. And what the best distributors did was they said, I know how to do things digital. I know my customers are struggling in the pandemic. How can I leverage my digital capabilities to help my customers? And when they did that, they made a social impact. I mean, what is the news about the pandemic about? It's about, how it's affecting our ability to work and live as individuals. And it's about businesses being shut down and then having to start up and then shut down again, right? And distributors came up with some very creative ways, leveraging technology to help our economy and help every business kind of get through the pandemic.
Very interesting, Mark. When you think about the B2B space and you think about the clients that you serve, and of course, all the people that are trying to, talk to you and get a piece of, Mark Dancer's time. When we think about the B2B space and we think about the distributors, is it your feeling that these distributors, that the only way they can really survive is to sort of go big or go home? Or is there another sweet spot that they can play in to sort of survive for the long term, going against some of the mega giants right now?
Yeah, well, the first thing I can tell distributors is, yes, as a leader in the business, you need to make sure you can survive. Nothing is guaranteed in today's game, and change is happening faster than before, and your fortunes can change really quickly. But I asked them to think optimistically, right? I asked them to think about, their path to the future. The distributor's best optimistic path to the future is to help their customers get to the future, right? And yes, so here's one example. Distributors, like many businesses, have thrown up e-commerce platforms and web stores. And customers in the pandemic want to buy online for social distancing and other reasons, right? And distributors saw a spike in online orders. That's great, right? But they've done other things too. And one example, and this is hugely creative, I know some distributors. One of them is featured in another thing I've published, an e-chapter called Distribution Leans In, right? What this distributor has been doing before the pandemic, and then it blew it out of the water during the pandemic, is they've created APIs to connect into their customers' business systems, right? And their customers, a lot of them are contractors, so it's that context. But from how they create leads, to how they get quotes, to how they schedule a project, to how they get delivery to that project. If they're up on their roof and they're installing some roofing and they have a problem and they forgot the answer, can you answer right then? And then after the project is over, either the old stuff's taken away and an ongoing customer relationship. So they're connecting through APIs to the customer's business systems. And it's such a huge mindset, because it means that the distributor's value to the customer is something I would call workflow, to helping the customers work their business systems, their processes work better, right? And that's like a 180-degree mind shift. It's not looking at the warehouse and saying, what can I sell you? It's saying, if I'm connected with you, I can help your business run better, right? And let's do that in a very modern, technology-connected, data-driven way.
I love that so much. I mean, Mark, that makes all the sense in the world. And, what you've been able to do at N4BI, you work with leaders and you've really helped them achieve sort of a go-to market excellence across a wide range of industries. It's really remarkable what you've been able to do. You mentioned something earlier about, a social mission. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because that's interesting to me and interesting to our viewers. Do you see the B2B space? Do you see the B2B companies, the distributors also starting to think about sort of the social mission or the way in which they're impacting our society? And how's all that working with you, Mark?
This is such a fun and exciting topic, right? I'm actually doing another bit of work right now with an organization called the Colorado University's Innovation Council. It's me and a graduate student at the nonprofit program at the University of Denver. What we're trying to do is connect the dots between the innovations that every business has to do, because we're all the digital age, right? And we all have to think about how we can transform our business, how we can connect those with things that fall in the world of social responsibility or stakeholder capitalism or conscious leadership. there's a number of activists kind of in that world, and they're doing great work. But a lot of times when they talk to business, it's a little bit like, you don't run your business this way, and you need to run your business this way going forward. That is absolutely not true, right? So what we're trying to do is connect the dots between social responsibility and business innovation. Here's an example, right? When I was growing up, years ago, and I played Little League, I remember two things. One was that I was pretty bad. I had no coordination. I got hit in the head countless times with balls. But the other thing was, I just remember that my Little League team was sponsored by a local plumber, right? That was that plumber's commitment to giving back to the local community. If you think back to the Obama administration, the First Lady, Michelle Obama, had a thing called MOVE, which was about getting kids to get out and get active and to participate in sports, right? That was perceived as a social impact project. But what that plumber or a distributor can do in their local market on a smaller scale is also social impact. And the businesses do it to help their culture because they're committed to the local community, because they learn things, because it builds their brand. It makes them feel like they're part of things. It makes their customers respect them. So when we do that on a small scale or a large scale inside of businesses, it's a social impact. We just need to think about it that way and draw attention to it.
I love it. It makes all the sense in the world. And obviously that's an important mission for not only you, but for so many companies out there. Mark, you've got this great saying, and the saying goes like this: let's reboot the real world. And I've read that on some of your writings, and I want to break that down a little bit. When you think in your mind about rebooting the real world, What exactly are you saying?
Yeah, well, first, real world is a term I try to use for businesses that are often referred to as legacy businesses or incumbent businesses. I hate those terms because they're pejorative, right? They're dismissive, right? And they don't have the cachet of a technology-driven company or a startup firm or a disruptor or a technology firm, right? And Reboot, what I mean by that is, I'm borrowing from the technology world. We all know what a reboot is. When something isn't working, you shut it down and start over, right? But the real meaning behind it goes to something you asked me about earlier. When real world businesses reboot, it's going to be coming up with a modern and fresh sense of way to work with their customers as humans, to achieve human objectives, and also to build communities. Right. So I think that part of rebooting is, in business school, I learned that you identify markets, you segment, you target the customers that you think you can sell to, and then you put a high-powered sales force out there and a high-powered marketing orgs out there and go out and sell to those businesses. Right. I think what's happening today is that businesses are starting from their other end. They're starting from their customers, and they're saying, what community do you belong to? Is it the community of welders? Is it a local community of businesses? Is it a community of procurement professionals, right? And how can I work towards community betterment, right? And and that locks into things like future of work trends. We don't produce enough people to work in the trades. Future of learning trends, like the way we learn in universities and colleges and high schools is changing. And distributors can tap in to those future trends of how we live our lives and do our work with their communities, and that all adds up to, just as you go from markets to segments to targets, going from humans to communities adds up to our society. Because what is our society but a collection of communities? And it's a reboot in how we think about finding opportunities and opportunities to serve.
I love it, Mark. It makes all the sense in the world. It's really fascinating the way you unwound this and the way that you sort of put it all together in a nice, neat package. It's a very complex, but yet you've been able to simplify it in a very seamless way so people can understand it, which is what I love. Now, there's an opportunity for distributors to really help their customers for the future. I mean, without the distributors, their customers really are going nowhere. But the thing that's interesting is that you lead the way teaching distributors how really to carve out a spot as a valued partner. In other words, you really teach your distributors that you really need to value your customer, and you need to really, really carve out a spot for them in your infrastructure or in your ecosystem to focus in on them and to help them. So let's talk about all of that, because that's very interesting.
It's a really tough topic, right? There's a lot of folks in all of B2B and especially in distribution who provide, sort of a doom and gloom message, which is your dinosaurs. That's why I hate the term legacy and incumbents, right? And distributors are intermediaries. They're in the middle of the supply chain. They're hemmed in. It's hard to earn margins. And so for a long time, distributors benchmarked against each other, and they really tried to eke out a little bit of net margin, right? Because their gross margins were constrained, right? So the breakout idea for distributors is to think about your customers and where they're going, and how can you either create value or instigate value, right? But not add value. When a distributor says they're going to add value, that's a mindset that says value starts with a product that somebody else makes, and I will add value to it. So creating value is about leveraging your knowledge, your resources, your people, the other businesses that you know, and then talking to your customers about what they need and figuring out how to bring all that to bear, plus the products, to create value in the customer's business. Instigating value goes to the idea of distributors are at the center of commerce, in the sense that customers are here, suppliers are here, they have relationships with vendors, other thought leaders, AI experts, they have relationships with universities, and they can bring that to bear, right? And that's about instigating value. It's about creating collaborations, which I'm told is called collabs nowadays, or collabs. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, right? But what you'll see more and more is that B2B companies, distributors and manufacturers and others, they will adopt from sort of one of the big trends in the future of work is that businesses are going to operate not by fixed processes and hiring permanent employees to them, but by putting teams together with workers that are in your company and throughout. And that's where distribution is heading. It's heading towards a future where they'll go to their customers and say, what projects do you have underway? Can I join them? Can I bring my people to it? Can I bring an AI vendor I know to it? Can I bring a 3D printer vendor I know to it? That's the path forward.
I love it, Mark. It makes all the sense in the world. Now, earlier you mentioned Amazon. So let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room just for a minute, because we speak to so many people, so many experts, so many worldwide leaders on the show, and quite often Amazon does get brought up in the conversations that we have, and it's very interesting to hear what people's perspective is in their particular niche or expertise with regard to the Amazon size and what they're doing in so many different spaces, and how they're leading the way in so many different things with technology. So from your standpoint, what is Amazon going to continue to do as it relates to the distributors? How is it going to affect the distribution channels throughout the world?
I think it's two things. One, it's scale. It's setting new expectations for scale. And then it's setting a new expectations for, I don't know what to call it, experimentation and where you can put your toe in the water. So on the scale side, and everything I've learned about Amazon, I've just learned from reading, right? But they have a fleet of airplanes. They have these massive warehouses. They are, the scale that they've been able to achieve is bigger than any single distributor can achieve, right? And that just, in the distribution world, distributors for many, many years have tried to remain competitive through consolidation. They buy each other and get bigger. And when they do that, they assume the customers of the company they acquired. They apply better business processes, better information systems, and scale. But now what are they comparing against? They're not comparing against other distributors. They're comparing their potential to compete on scale versus Amazon. And that's right? It's crazy, right? And then on the put your toe in the water side and just do something and experiment, Amazon now has a beauty salon in the UK. What's that about, right? And to me, the professional beauty world is a big industry, right? It's one that was impacted by the pandemic. We all hold stories about stylists who couldn't work. It has a lot to do with our sense of self. How you look is how you feel, right? I don't know that Amazon is, I don't know, I'm guessing that they're dealing with any of that. That's the human side of it, right? But I think Amazon is many things, but they're not here to help. That's my personal view. So what are they doing? I think it's a bit like the Whole Foods model. They're wondering whether if they have a store presence, a salon presence, whether that can enable their maybe local distribution of products. I know a distributor in the beauty industry who stepped up during the pandemic, and when their stylists in the salons that they served couldn't generate any revenue. And most stylists is an independent contractor, right? They go to the salon and they work, and when they can't work, there's no cash. And what they did was they threw up a website that stylists could use to sell products. It was for the stylist to sell product, shampoo and other things to their clients at home, right? And so that was hugely innovative, and they did more things. And I think Amazon is just trying to figure out whether there's a network of salons and stylists that can get them to a bigger toe in the water in terms of professional beauty products, maybe distribution points. Who knows? I think they always have a plan before they act, but I think they experiment, and we should all be trying to figure out what they're going to learn from that experiment.
That's going to be very interesting to watch. And obviously, Mark, you've got your thumb on the pulse, and it makes all the sense in the world. You're doing such a great job at N4BI, Network for Business Innovation. I know you've only cut out a certain amount of time for me today, but I do have a couple more questions. And the first question I have for you, which I've been thinking about, is about corporate culture. And when we think about distributors and we think about their culture, in so many different types of businesses, the corporate culture really leads. The corporate culture starts at the top and leads. Is it the same way with distributors, with the distribution channel? And how does all that work? What are we looking at with regard to corporate culture for the distributors?
It's true everywhere. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, as they say, and culture can impede digital transformations and the use of artificial intelligence and automation. Distributors, in a sense, their cultures are perfect for what they need, right? Because they are, the tradition, many of them still are family-owned businesses. And, business comes from the heart. Some of them are ESOPs, employee-owned. They have a service culture. And even the ones that are now, have a private equity company in the mix, or they're publicly traded, that culture of, yes, we have products in the warehouse, but it's our people and it's our relationships that matter. It still holds true. The challenge for distributors, I like to think of culture as values and behaviors, right? The values are there. What distributors need to do is to figure out in the digital age, what are the behaviors, the oftentimes new behaviors that most help us deliver that value from the culture that we offer. Right. And that's about things like being able to leverage data, which is hard for any business, right? Being able to, run your business processes in a more flexible way where they're changing. And then especially for distributors, I like behaviors that go to leaning in. A distributor used that term with me recently and it rocked my head, because lean in is used from activist circles and social services. And distributors as a group are very conservative businesses. They traditionally watch their inventory, because if the economy gets down, they get stuck with inventory. So there's a culture of caution. And what they need is a culture of leaning in, where the behaviors are, if I see a problem, I'm going to work on it inside my business and with my customers.
I love it, Mark. It makes all the sense in the world. This thing that you said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I love that. That is really interesting. That's a real gem. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I love that so much, Mark. Now, before we go, and again, thank you so much for slicing some time out. I wanted to talk about entrepreneurship, because we have younger people that do watch the show, startup founders and people like that. And oftentimes these people, these young entrepreneurs, they hit a roadblock, or they hit a bump in the road, or they hit a pothole in the road, and they don't know where to turn. Sometimes they get a little freaked out. Sometimes they're not exactly sure what to do. Sometimes they reach out to a mentor or an advisor to help them get through it. But what type of advice could you give to a younger entrepreneur, Mark, based on your experience, when they do come up across a roadblock, or they do hit a road bump, or they do hit a pothole, when things maybe move against them a little bit? What type of advice can you give those younger entrepreneurs based on what you've seen out in the world?
My advice, I think, would be to be prepared, be bold, move ahead. But as an entrepreneur, which we all kind of have to be entrepreneurs nowadays, be ready, right? And because you're going to have ups and downs, and there's two ways you can be ready. One is to build your network, right? And today, that was advice given to me way back when, long before the internet, in the dark ages. And building a network back then was about, God, it was hard. It was about having lunches with people, calling them up, right? Now you've got so many networking tools. On the professional side, you have LinkedIn, but even, any social media network can be a way to connect with people. Networking is about finding a common interest and having a conversation that's mutually beneficial. And it's so supercharged today. Build your network. This is my personal view, but I also think that entrepreneurs should think about becoming a thought leader. And there's books out there on this. I like Dory Clark, right? Has a series of books which are very helpful. But from what I've done is I did blogs, and now I have a Substack newsletter, right? I picked a topic and I write a short topic on that, a thing on that every week. What that does is that, whether I'm at a consult, I've worked for lots of businesses. I have a checkered past, as they say, right? But the one theme throughout them is I've been writing for blog posts and now my newsletter, and it helps me focus in on what I know and how it applies. And it's gotten me hired. It's gotten me my next gig. It's helped me work with startup companies, right? It's the act of networking, thinking about what I want to be known for, coming up with ideas, writing about them, getting some feedback, having a conversation, going back to networking. That is a core competency that we can start in high school and we can carry all the way through our careers. And you can even make money at it today as a side gig. Companies like Substack are about enabling that, right? So that can carry you through the thick and thin of businesses that are starting and stopping.
I love it so much, Mark. So for the younger entrepreneurs, really surround yourself with talented people. Make sure you have a well of information coming from people that know things that maybe you don't know. So in other words, make sure you surround yourself with a mentor. Make sure you surround yourself with talented people. It makes all the sense in the world, Mark. Listen, this has been just a delight to have you on the show. I call you the king of distribution with N4BI, the Network for Business Innovation. I love it. You've got your blog, you've got your writing, you've got your podcast. There's so much press about you everywhere online. You've got books that you've written. You offer all kinds of services in this particular space. I love the culture eats strategy for breakfast. We've spoken about the social mission. We've spoken about the culture. We've really talked about it all. We've really talked about really having you help leaders achieve go-to market excellence across a wide range of industries, including emerging markets. It's just fascinating the types of companies you've worked with. I just wanted to take a minute, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on the Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. This has been absolutely awesome.
I am so happy to be here, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm all about creating conversations, and this kind of forum and what you do is excellent, and it's just perfect for me. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, truly.